Bienvenido a Historias en la Penumbra. En este territorio de medias luces, donde la claridad apenas alcanza, las historias más terroríficas surgen lentamente desde la oscuridad. Aquí, los susurros del miedo narran relatos capaces de congelar tu sangre y acelerar tu pulso hasta el límite. Cada narración te conducirá a un laberinto oscuro, plagado de secretos macabros y terrores insondables. Prepárate para adentrarte en un mundo donde la realidad se difumina y el miedo es la única certeza que queda. My initial glimpse of motion amidst the tombstones of Hollow Grove Cemetery, a flicker too swift for sanity, I dismissed as another courier slicing through the dark. Who else possesses the peculiar blend of urgency and disregard necessary to navigate that shadowed expanse at 11:30 on a Tuesday night? Yet, no delivery hack dashes with such unnerving velocity, nor leaves impressions quite so deep, so desperate in the earth. 3 years I've navigated the nocturnal arteries of this city, chasing decent pay, amplified by gratuities, and the quietude of empty asphalt. This particular Tuesday commenced unremarkably, a thermal bag brimming with orders from the Golden Elephant Thai kitchen downtown, destined primarily for bleary-eyed university students battling finals. My navigation app, stubbornly cautious, kept insisting on lengthy detours around Hollow Grove, tacking 10 precious minutes onto each run. By the third drop-off, impatience won. Time, after all, was money. Cutting through the cemetery was a known, if unspoken, stratagem among drivers. Hollow Grove's wrought iron maw stood perpetually agape, legacy of some archaic preservation mandate dating back to its consecration in 1843. The slender access lane coiled between listing headstones and monuments succumbing to time's patient erosion. My headlights skimmed across names weathered nearly to oblivion, casting elongated dancing shadows from iron crucifixes and stone seraphim onto the sere grass. I feathered the accelerator, mindful of the rutted track and the aging suspension of my sedan, a veteran of 140,000 hard miles. Inside, the air hung thick with the aroma of lemongrass and coconut milk. Pangs of hunger rumbled beneath my ribs. Perhaps a cancelled order would yield a container of leftover Tom Yum. Midway through the necropolis, a peripheral blur snagged my attention. At first, merely the interplay of light and shadow. My mind rationalized. Then, starkly defined, a silhouette, impossibly fluid, flowed between the markers, covering maybe 50 feet of open ground in the span of a single eye blink. Instinct slammed my foot onto the brake pedal. Takeout containers surged forward, thudding against the dash. I peered through the windshield's grime, scanning the moon-dappled landscape. Stillness reigned, save for the sighing of wind through skeletal branches. "Just tired," I murmured, the words thin in the enclosed space. Minds inventing phantoms. Double shifts all week, covering for a sick colleague. Sleep deprivation painted strange murals on the canvas of perception. I eased onto the gas again, urging the car forward with more haste. Escape velocity from this place felt suddenly paramount. Gaze fixed resolutely ahead. Ignore the leaning stones. Ignore the pockets of profound darkness. Just drive. Something streaked past on the passenger side. A flash, immediate and gone, like a corrupted video file playing at unnatural speed. A reflexive jerk of the wheels sent me skidding perilously close to a chipped marble obelisk. My pulse became a frantic drum against my sternum. This time, looking was unavoidable. Illuminated in the crimson wash of my brake lights, a sequence of impressions scarred the dew-kissed turf. Footprints, leading directly toward my vehicle, halting abruptly just shy of the passenger door. They were gouged into the ground, testament to ferocious, desperate speed. I stomped the accelerator. The engine shrieked in protest as I hurtled down the narrow lane. Suspension be damned. My mirrors reflected only receding monuments and grasping shadows, swallowed by the dwindling red glow of my taillights. The remainder of the shift dissolved into a mechanical sequence of deliveries. Addresses, handoffs, strained pleasantries, all processed on some detached cognitive level. By the final drop at 2 a.m., a fragile layer of self-convincing had formed. I'd hallucinated the cemetery encounter. Exhaustion breeds demons. Pointing my sedan homeward, I deliberately chose the circuitous route, skirting Hollowgrove's perimeter. No more shortcuts. The streets lay deserted, punctuated only by the occasional growl of a long-haul truck. My eyelids felt weighted with lead. 15 minutes more to bed. A few blocks shy of my apartment, the fuel light blinked its insistence. The fluorescent glare of the beacon gas station rendered the mundane world stark, almost hyper-real. Solitude clung to the place. The night attendant remained engrossed in his phone as I entered the small convenience store to pay. Returning to my car, a glacial dread seeped into my bones. There, stark against the dusty paintwork on the passenger side, muddy footprints, ochre smudges, prints unmistakably human, yet unsettlingly placed, marred the flank of my sedan. They began mere inches from the door, trailing along the car's length as if someone had sprinted alongside me. The mud was a distinctive reddish-brown clay, Hollowgrove soil. Numbly, I traced their path around the vehicle. They followed the entire contour to the rear bumper, then simply ceased, vanished. My hands trembled as I fumbled the key into the driver's side lock. Inside, the air felt altered. Beneath the fading perfume of Thai spices lurked an underlying miasma, loamy and cloying, the scent of disturbed soil and things long buried. The drive home was executed with rigid adherence to the speed limit, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Each red light stretched into an eternity of anxious mirror checking. The streets behind remained stubbornly empty. Pulling up outside my apartment building, I bolted indoors, refusing the urge to look back. Sleep offered no refuge. Every descent towards unconsciousness was shattered by the phantom echo of running footsteps just outside my second-floor window. Around 4 a.m., exhaustion finally dragged me under, into a shallow, troubled slumber. Morning arrived filtered through a lens of unreality. The muddy prints remained etched onto my car, looking almost mundane, less menacing in the daylight. Rational explanations queued up. A prankster during a delivery stop? Mud splashed from a passing vehicle? Maybe. My phone vibrated. A text from my supervisor. Crew still short tonight. Need cover, late shift again. Rate is time, plus is half. I stared at the screen, the words blurring. Prudence screamed, refuse, rest, recover. But rent loomed, and the enhanced rate was a powerful lure. Okay, I typed back, the single word feeling like a betrayal. I'll do it. Dusk bled across the sky as I pulled into the Golden Elephant's lot to begin the cycle anew. One inviolable rule now governed my routes: Hollow Grove Cemetery was forbidden territory, regardless of time saved. Well-lit thoroughfares only. The initial hours unfolded predictably. Pad Thai for students, spring rolls for families, the familiar Tuesday rhythm. I adhered strictly to main roads, ignoring the navigation system's persistent suggestions to cut through the graveyard. The added minutes were a small price for fragile peace of mind. Around 10:30, an order pinged, an address directly bordering the far side of Hollow Grove. Even the sanctioned detour would inflate the delivery time by 20 minutes. The customer had already phoned twice, impatience coloring their tone. I sat idling, the GPS display a silent accusation. 7 minutes via the cemetery, 27 via the safe route. An irate customer meant a jeopardized rating. Too many poor scores, and the algorithm demoted you, starved you of orders. "This is absurd," I vocalized into the quiet car. "It's just a graveyard. Nothing happened. You were exhausted, seeing shadows." Before logic could mount a stronger defense, I had turned onto the lane leading towards Hollow Grove's shadowed gates. The entrance felt different tonight, imbued with a deeper darkness. The ironwork cast skeletal patterns in my headlight beams. Passing through, a distinct pressure shift occurred in my ears, the kind you feel ascending a steep mountain road. Eyes locked forward. Focus on the path. Ignore the periphery. Just drive. Expedite passage. Halfway through, my phone signal evaporated. The GPS screen went dark. Perfect. Just perfect. The route was familiar enough, but the loss of connection amplified a rising anxiety. The access road curved sharply around a hulking marble mausoleum. As I negotiated the turn, my headlights illuminated something that forced a panicked stomp on the brakes. Footprints. Not one set, but dozens, perhaps hundreds, lacerating the dirt road ahead. They were pressed deep, violent indentations suggesting impossible velocity, and they were undeniably fresh. Reverse gear engaged. Delivery time be damned. Rating be damned. Escape was the only imperative. The engine whined, tires spitting gravel, but the car remained stubbornly stationary. Wheels spun uselessly. A glance in the rearview mirror stole my breath. More prints were materializing on the road behind me, blooming into existence from nothing, one after another, relentlessly closing the distance. A scream lodged, silent, in my throat. The prints reached the rear bumper. Then, impossibly, they began appearing along the driver's side, marching forward. Movement flickered at the edge of my vision. Against every screaming instinct demanding I not look, I slowly turned my head. Pressed against the driver's side window, distorted by the glass, was a face. Humanoid, yet hideously wrong. Skin the color of damp clay, sunken tight against bone. Eyes like burnt holes, absorbing all light. And a mouth, stretched into a ghastly, impossibly wide rictus, displaying rows of supernumerary, needle-sharp teeth. I slammed the gear shift into drive, flooring the accelerator. Tires shrieked, found purchase, and the car launched forward. In the side mirror, a figure ran alongside. It kept pace effortlessly as the speedometer climbed. 40, 50, 60 miles per hour. Its movements were nightmarishly jerky, limbs churning with the frantic, unnatural rhythm of sped-up film, arms flailing at disjointed, impossible vectors. Yet it mirrored my velocity perfectly, a predatory shadow glued to my flank. 70 miles per hour, as I burst through the cemetery gates. In that instant, the figure simply ceased to exist, vanishing between one frame and the next. The rearview mirror showed only Hollow Grove receding into the night, its stone sentinels impassive. My phone chimed back to life, the GPS recalibrating. The pressure in my ears subsided. The mundane symphony of the city crept back in. Distant sirens, a barking dog, the low hum of transformers. I swerved into the first gas station lot I saw, the fluorescent glare feeling like a sanctuary. For 20 minutes, I just sat, tremors racking my body. When I finally mustered the courage to inspect the car, fresh footprints tracked its entire length, from rear bumper to front wheel well. The mud glistened, still wet. A call to my supervisor, feigned family emergency. He wasn't pleased, but his displeasure felt insignificant. I drove straight home, main roads only. Every stoplight a fresh agony of mirror checking. That was 3 days ago. I haven't worked since. My supervisor's calls go unanswered. The footprints remain on my car. Some paralysis prevents me from washing them away. At night, sometimes, I hear running outside my apartment. Swift, impossibly swift footsteps. Today, I secured a new job stocking shelves in a supermarket. Strictly daylight hours. The pay doesn't compare, but it keeps me far from Hollow Grove Cemetery. Here's the detail that chills me most profoundly. Notifications still appear on my phone from the delivery app I deleted. Orders for addresses just beyond the cemetery. The suggested route invariably bisects Hollow Grove, and occasionally, very late at night, I glimpse my car's headlights flicking on by themselves in the parking lot below. A chilling certainty coalesces. Some presence hitched a ride from that unhallowed ground. Something that runs far too fast and grins far too wide. Something that wants me to return. I'm committing this to writing because someone needs to know. Perhaps another has seen it. Perhaps someone understands what it is, how to appease it, how to make it leave. My only certainty is this. I will make no more deliveries through Hollow Grove Cemetery. If you drive these streets after dark, I implore you, do the same. Take the long way. The extra minutes are a negligible cost. Because whatever sprints between those graves is not of our world. And once its gaze falls upon you, it does not forget. I hear them now. Footsteps outside my window. Running. I'm on the second floor. They're getting closer. "3 days since my arrival. Julian is the name I carry. I materialized beside this brooding lock, drawn by whispers of anomaly. Tales gleaned from a reticent librarian concerning peculiar apparitions haunting its shores across the decades. My shelter, a stark, solitary structure perched precariously close to the water's edge, a ribbon of glutinous mud and jagged stones, its only buffer. Into this space, I deposited my few essentials: a simple timber table, a collapsible chair, a carton brimming with blank notebooks, a weighty beam torch. My cot found its place in the corner, nestled near the sole aperture offering a view. Come nightfall, the lock's skin reveals itself, flattened by the lunar glow, yet possessing a depth of blackness that defied expectation. Town folklore warned against lingering past the witching hour. Such counsel I dismissed. Empirical truth, not fanciful narrative, was my quarry. That initial night found me positioned by the window, scrutinizing the aqueous expanse. Stillness reigned. No zephyr stirred the surface. Yet, The water held reflections askew, mirroring the familiar celestial bodies with a disturbing distortion. The moon, captured there, resembled not a perfect disk, but a shard of soiled crystal. My beam torch pierced the dark, illuminating only a fleeting circle of water before being swallowed whole. Nothing transpired. As midnight approached, an invasive cold prompted the activation of a small electric heater. Sleep claimed me on the cot, yielding only to the dawn's indifferent light. Nothing untoward, merely observations jotted down between sips of bitter coffee boiled on my portable stove and mouthfuls of cold beans. The ensuing day was consumed by a circumnavigation of the shoreline, my boots sinking slightly into earth that remained inexplicably sodden despite a prolonged dry spell. No fauna left its signature here, only perplexing little orifices puncturing the mire. A borrowed rowboat awaited, my intent being to plumb the loch's heart, to gaze directly down, seeking revelation from its depths. A simple field exercise, I told myself then. A routine assessment. The second evening resumed my vigil at the glass pane, notebook poised, beam torch within reach, the heater humming softly against the encroaching chill. I strained my ears against a profound quietude. A silence waited, denser than mere absence of sound. Midnight arrived electronically on my phone's display. Precisely then, the loch's surface underwent a subtle metamorphosis. Luna still hung high, casting its glow, but the reflection fractured, blooming with motes and forms that held no celestial counterpart. Inclining towards the window, my breath frosting the cool glass, I discerned them, likenesses of visages, perhaps two, undulating just beneath the skin of the water. Their motion was aberrant, characterized by twitches and abrupt dilations. A vigorous rub of my eyes failed to dispel the phantoms. They persisted, sharp and defined, like transparencies submerged. Beam torch in hand, I ventured out, planting my feet deliberately on the treacherous, slick earth. At the water's lip, I directed the light onto the surface. It struck, causing the submerged faces to shimmer, yet they endured. With a grunt, I shoved the rowboat into the loch. It groaned, a low, scraping protest against the mud. Once aboard, I began to row with measured strokes. The air remained utterly still, allowing the small craft effortless passage. My torchlight remained fixed on the water ahead. Scarcely 10 feet from the bank, the visages reappeared, drifting spectrally beneath my hull, pallid and warped. A quick check confirmed they bore no resemblance to my own reflection. These countenances held expressions alien to my repertoire, eyes wide with a silent, perpetual tension, mouths articulating soundless words in slow, gaping motions. Leaning far over the gunwale, torch held low, I peered down, but the water's opacity yielded no secrets from below. Suddenly, a distinct impact from beneath the boat, not the glancing blow of a fish, but a solid, dull percussion. I went rigid. A scan of the surroundings revealed only placid water, yet contact persisted from the unseen depths. Another thud resonated, followed by a sickening, sliding friction along the keel. My grip tightened on the oars, hands betraying a tremor as I propelled the vessel shoreward. Breath hitched in my throat. I fought to maintain composure, avoid any sudden shifts in weight, any extraneous sound. The welcome rasp of hull on mud signaled my return. I vaulted out, hauling the boat higher onto the bank, relief washing over me with the return of solid ground beneath my feet. Pausing, I drew deliberate breaths, attempting to quell the frantic rhythm in my chest. The beam torch swept across the water once more. The faces had vanished. The surface lay inert. A soft, persistent dripping broke the silence. Glancing down, I saw my boots being slowly swallowed by the mire. The air hung thick with a stagnant, marshy odor. After securing the boat further inland, I navigated back towards the cabin, the torch beam meticulously probing the path for hidden cavities. Crossing the threshold, a wrongness immediately registered. The floorboards were slick with moisture, despite the securely locked door and sealed window I had left behind. No leak presented itself upon inspection. Then, my light found them. Impressions upon the damp wood. Bare footprints, sized comparably to my own, perhaps marginally broader. They traced a path from the entryway across the confined space, terminating unnervingly close to my cot. A swift, thorough search. Beneath the bed, behind the meager table, within the shallow closet, yielded nothing. The dwelling held only myself. Yet, my pulse hammered against my ribs. The prints glistened, undeniably fresh, beaded with tiny runnels of water. Touching one confirmed its damp chill clung to my skin. A profound disquiet settled in. My defenses were scant. The torch, a simple folding knife. Motionless, I strained to listen. A subtle vibration entered the air, a low, meandering hum, tuneless and sluggish, like a half-remembered dirge. It drew me towards the corner, diagonal to my cot. Nothing occupied the space but bare planks, yet the sound emanated undeniably from within the room itself. Flicking the torch off, then on, I searched for anomalies revealed by shifting light, finding only the impassive wall. The humming persisted, its cadence erratic, rising and falling unpredictably, less a melody than a sonic wandering. As I approached the wall, the sound intensified, resolving into something akin to susurration behind the timber. Pressing my ear flat against the wood, I caught a faint, dry scrape. I recoiled instinctively. The door remained bolted from within, the window latched tight. Kneeling, I touched the cold moisture of the footprints again. Perhaps, I reasoned, the intruder had departed. Unlatching the door, I swept the torch beam across the muddy threshold and the perimeter of the cabin. Nothing. No impressions marred the sodden earth leading away. Towards the lock, only darkness stared back. Listening intently, I confirmed the humming, though fainter now, was indeed confined to the structure. Retreating inside, I secured the door once more, my breathing deliberately shallow, chest constricted. Logic scrabbled for purchase. Structural oddities, seepage from beneath the walls, moisture tracked in by my own boots. But my footwear rested on the designated mat, dry. These prints were unequivocally barefoot. Measuring one against my hand revealed its subtle distinctions. A broader span, blunted toes unlike my own, a shorter stride between impressions. The hum dissolved, replaced by a sibilant whisper, indistinct, like phantom breaths escaping unseen lips. Words remained elusive. Retreating, I pressed my spine against the door, attempting to encompass the entire room in my gaze. Just then, a single bead of water detached itself from the ceiling, landing with a soft plink upon my table. My torch beam shot upwards, revealing only unblemished timber, no stain, no discernible source of leakage. Another droplet materialized from the ether, tracing the same path to the floor. Wiping it with my sleeve, the unmistakable fetid, muddy aroma of the loch water assaulted my senses. My gut clenched. Flight was tempting, yet impossible. The nearest lodging lay miles distant, unreachable without transport. Resigned, I took a steadying breath. Vigilance was the only recourse. Seating myself on the cot, torch clutched tight, I silenced the heater to sharpen my hearing. The air grew instantly frigid, raising gooseflesh. Shivers racked my frame. Eventually, the whispering ceased, plunging the cabin back into silence, a silence now pregnant with menace. Sleep remained a distant shore. My torch swept relentlessly across walls and floor, tracing the faint, evaporating outlines of the alien footprints. My heart refused to quiet its frantic cadence. Dawn arrived after an eternity of fitful waking, each brief lapse into unconsciousness punctuated by the phantom gurgle of water. Morning light did little to dispel the night's residue. Coffee was brewed, a cold ration consumed without relish, appetite having fled. I forced myself to document the preceding hours in my notebook, the visages shimmering beneath the lock's surface, the inexplicable damp footprints, the disembodied humming, the precise chronology centered around midnight. Resolve hardened amidst the lingering fear. Tonight, I would try again, but armed differently, a small mirror positioned by the window, my phone mounted to capture video. If the apparitions returned, I would secure irrefutable proof. The daylight hours were dedicated to another circuit of the shoreline, clad in boots and slicker. I traced the muddy perimeter, noting the profound absence of life. No avian calls, no piscine disturbances on the water's heavy surface. The loch itself seemed viscous, almost gelatinous. Prodding it with a branch yielded a thin, repulsive film of slime that I scraped clean against tussocks of coarse grass. Some unusually shaped stones caught my eye, but offered no further clues. As dusk began to settle, I encountered the neighbor, the boat's lender. Had I witnessed anything unusual? He inquired casually. Difficulty sleeping was my cautious reply. He offered a slow nod, murmuring about the cabin's transient occupants. How few endured its proximity to the water for long. Further probing met only a shrug and a mumbled excuse about pending chores, leaving me entirely alone with my burgeoning dread. Back within the cabin's confines before true darkness fell, I meticulously arranged my apparatus. The phone found its perch on a small tripod near the window. On the sill, I positioned the mirror, angled to capture the lock's reflection indirectly. Camera function verified. The lens held the reflected water within its frame. Beam torch and knife lay ready on the table. This time, the door lock was not merely turned, but tasted, twice, then reinforced with the back of the folding chair wedged beneath the knob. My boots remained near the cot. A meager repast of beans and water did little to ease the tension coiling in my shoulders, the icy stiffness in my hands that I chafed together uselessly. Midnight chimed silently within my phone. Through the window, under a brilliant moon, the lock appeared deceptively placid. Again, the lunar reflection warped, an unstable image. Then, a transformation. The distortion elongated, coalescing into multiple forms. I ensured the camera was aimed true, recording active. The visages materialized once more, but now multiplied, drifting languidly across the reflected surface. Their eyes, wide and vacant, seemed fixed forward, questing. A prickling sensation traced paths along my arms. Simultaneously, a faint, rhythmic tap, tap, tap sounded against the window pane. A swift scan of the room confirmed my solitude. Stepping cautiously outside, hugging the cabin wall, I played the beam torch across the water. The faces were no mere reflection. no artifact of lens or mirror. They swam beneath the surface, visible to my unaided eye, shifting with unnerving fluidity. From the direction of the beached rowboat came a delicate scratching. Crouching, I peered beneath its hull, illuminating only a patch of glistening mud. As I rose, maintaining a steady beam, an icy sensation brushed my ankle. I flinched violently, directing the light downward. Nothing but a small, spreading puddle stained the ground where I stood. My trouser cuff was suddenly soaked. A phantom pressure, like an unseen eddy swirling around my boot, persisted for a moment before vanishing. Scrambling back inside, I slammed the door shut. The camera's recording light still glowed reassuringly. My breath came in ragged gasps, heart galloping against my ribs as I fought for equilibrium. The aberrant humming returned, localized now, seeming to press against the window glass itself. The same meandering, tuneless quality persisted. I backed away, keeping the torch fixed on the pane, which threw back only my own reflection against the dim interior. No other presence revealed itself. Extinguishing the light momentarily, I peered into the profound outer blackness, eyes straining, seeking any luminescence, any movement. Nothing. Upon restoring the beam, the humming abruptly ceased. A check of the floor revealed fresh, damp footprints near the far wall, the same area where the sound had first manifested the previous night. These prints described a tight, inexplicable circle before simply vanishing mid-floor. Fatigue warred with hypervigilance. Sleep was an impossibility. A dull ache throbbed behind my temples. I endured the remaining hours until dawn painted the sky. Retrieving my phone, I reviewed the recording. Success of a sort. The spectral faces flickered within the reflected water on screen, faint yet undeniable. The audio track captured the insidious humming, punctuated by my own tremulous narration. Evidence existed now, tangible data. Yet the question remained, what purpose could it serve? As before, the footprints evaporated with the rising sun, leaving no physical trace. The humming remained exclusively nocturnal. Under daylight scrutiny, the lock resumed its mask of mundane water. Departure beckoned, a siren call of safety. Yet, the investigator in me craved more definitive proof. Water samples? Further recordings? Perhaps from the boat itself? The mere thought of venturing onto that black surface again constricted my chest, bringing back the memory of the solid thuds beneath the hull, the violating presence of damp footprints within my locked sanctuary. Even with the window open to the morning air, the cabin retained the persistent, stale miasma of the loch. Against better judgment, against the rising tide of instinct screaming for retreat, I resolved to endure one final night. An attempt at daytime repose proved futile. Lying on the cot, eyes shut tight, offered no true rest, only a descent into a doze haunted by faint, aqueous disturbances, gurgles and drips echoing in the threshold of sleep. By late afternoon, my nerves were frayed thin. Respiration grew shallow, and my hands trembled so violently that gripping a pen became a challenge. Another walk around the loch's perimeter, undertaken in a desperate bid for clarity, yielded only the familiar tableau: lifeless water, sucking mud, utter solitude. Returning to the cabin, I enacted the now familiar ritual of preparation: beam torch, knife, camera, mirror. The door secured. A fleeting impulse to barricade the window arose, but the need to observe, to witness, overruled it. Midnight. The visages returned to the water's depths, sharper now, their clarity chilling. I could distinctly perceive the movement of their eyes, the slow, silent articulation of their mouths. A low vibration began to thrum through the floorboards beneath my feet. My torch swept the walls as the humming ignited once more. Louder this time, dissonant, painfully off-key. Knife gripped tight, I advanced towards the wall where the sound seemed most concentrated, feeling it pulse directly beside my ear. I thrust the blade tentatively into the airspace, encountering no resistance. The sound seemed incorporeal, permeating the very structure around me. My heart hammered. Sweat slicked my palms. The door vibrated in its frame, rattling softly. Acting on sheer adrenaline, I wrenched it open, blasting the torchlight into the night. Emptiness greeted me. Slamming it shut, leaning against it, panting, I felt the dampness of perspiration soaking through my shirt. The humming receded, supplanted by a slow, deliberate dripping sound originating near the window. Turning, I saw a solitary rivulet of water tracing a path down the inside of the glass. A hesitant touch confirmed its icy temperature, releasing the pervasive, foul scent of the loch. I snatched my hand back as if burned. A glance confirmed the camera faithfully recorded still. Defeated, I retreated to the cot, sinking down, the beam torch and knife resting heavy in my lap, twin talismans against the encroaching dark as I resigned myself to await the dawn. A miasma, sharp and coppery, clawed its way into my senses the moment the key turned in room 2113's lock. My fingers clenched on the cold brass knob, a primal tremor running up my arm, urging retreat. But I was Elias, custodian of the quiet hours, and the uncommunicative guest within demanded investigation. Drawing a breath, a mistake, the foulness coating my throat, I pushed inward. Darkness held dominion, thick curtains swallowing the meager luminescence from the parking lot below. My hand, betraying me with its slight tremble, swept the wall for the switch. An uncertain flicker, then stark overhead light flooded the space, etching a tableau of neglect into my memory. Pristine, the bed remained an island of order, sheets taut and undisturbed. But the shores around it, chaos. Garments, men's and women's mingled indiscriminately, formed drifts against the furniture. Cartons of long-finished meals festered on every flat surface, blooming with decay. And the smell? Oh, the smell. It coiled, dense and undeniable, from behind the closed bathroom door. My pulse hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. That door, a profound reluctance rooted me to the spot. Every instinct shrieked, "Flee, summon authority, do not cross that threshold." Yet, duty compelled me forward. My hand, slick with sweat, barely managed the turn of the knob. It swung inward with a low groan, unleashing the full, staggering weight of the stench. It struck like a fist. There, submerged in the porcelain tub, lay the occupant of 2113. Skin like bleached wax, eyes flung wide to a vacant eternity. Days gone, clearly. A strangled gasp escaped me as I recoiled, one hand clamped over my mouth. Escape. Police. Now. I pivoted, desperate for the hallway, but froze. Footfalls, heavy, measured, echoing from the corridor, approaching. Raw panic seized me. Who? The guest was beyond disturbance. This floor was deserted. My eyes darted, seeking improvised defense amidst the squalor. The steps halted directly outside. Silence stretched, taut as wire. Then the distinct, soft, schlick of a key card sliding into the reader. The closet, my only refuge. I hurled myself inside, burrowing between the hanging ghosts of absent coats just as the room door whispered open. Through a sliver of darkness between the louvered doors, I watched. A figure entered, tall, broad, draped entirely in black. A hood shadowed his features, but twin points of reflected light marked his eyes. He moved with chilling purpose, crossing directly to the bathroom. Paralyzed, breath held captive in my lungs, I observed the grim ballet. With practiced ease, he extracted the body from the tub, bundled it within the shower curtain, and hoisted the burden onto one shoulder. Then commenced the erasure. For an eternity measured in heartbeats, I remained entombed in stale fabric and fear. He scoured every surface, methodical, relentless, obliterating all traces of the horror. The scattered clothing vanished, the decaying food, every sign that life, however briefly, had unfolded here. At last, he stood surveying the immaculate space, a curt nod of satisfaction. He turned toward the exit, but he paused. Slowly, deliberately, his hooded head swiveled towards my hiding place. My heart ceased. He knows. I shrank deeper into the coats, praying for invisibility. One step towards the closet. Another. The rush of blood roared in my ears. The flimsy door was about to be ripped open. Suddenly, a muted buzz emanated from his pocket. He retrieved the phone, glanced at its screen, and the tension broke. Without a backward look, he slipped out, taking his ghastly package with him. Only when the silence reclaimed the corridor did I dare to draw breath. My legs, unreliable stilts, carried me from the closet. My mind was a maelstrom. What now? The police? Who would credit such a tale? The room gleamed, sterile, offering no corroboration. And if they did believe, would the man in black return? For me? I staggered into the hall, reaching the elevator, jabbing the lobby button with a trembling finger. My reflection surfaced in the mirrored panels, a pale, haunted visage, eyes wide with residual terror. The chime announced the lobby. I stepped out, forcing a mask of normalcy onto my features. No one could know. Chloe was at the desk, her shift overlapping mine. "Everything all right, Elias?" Her brow furrowed with concern. "You look like you've wrestled a specter." A smile stretched my lips, feeling brittle and false. "Just worn out," I mumbled. "You know how these nights can be." She nodded, accepting the lie. "Go grab a coffee. I've got this." Grateful, I retreated to the sterile quiet of the break room and sank into a chair, thoughts racing. Pretend? Impossible. Speak? Dangerous. My phone lay heavy in my hand. The right thing to do warred with the instinct for self-preservation. My thumb hovered over the emergency number, paralyzed by indecision. The door swung open. I shoved the phone away. Ronan, one of the security team, ambled towards the coffee machine. "Evening, Elias," he greeted casually, all quiet on the Western Front. I managed a nod, voice lost somewhere in my throat. He poured his coffee, then turned, his gaze sharpening. "You okay, man? Bit green around the gills." My mouth opened, intending reassurance, but the dam broke. The words tumbled out. The reeking room, the body, the hooded cleaner, the impossible erasure. Ronan listened, his face growing progressively graver, the lines around his eyes deepening. When I finished, breathless, he placed his mug down carefully. "Elias," he began, his voice low and even. "You're absolutely certain of this?" I nodded fiercely. "It sounds insane, I know, but it happened. We have to call the authorities." Ronan raised a calming hand. "Hang on. Slow down. You said he cleaned it all? No trace?" Another nod, confusion clouding my fear. "And you're the only one who saw any of it?" he pressed. "Yes, but..." "So," Ronan cut in, his tone flat, "it's your testimony against an empty room. Think, Elias. We call them, they find nothing. A spotless room, no corpse, no mess. Just you, spinning a wild yarn." Ice traced its way down my spine. He was right. It sounded utterly unbelievable. "But we can't just ignore it," I whispered. Ronan sighed, dragging a hand through his thinning hair. "Look, I've been doing this job a long time. There are currents, undercurrents. It's wiser not to disturb. My advice? Let it go. Bury it. For your own good." I stared, aghast. "Just forget it?" He gave a grim, confirming nod. "Sometimes silence is the safest harbor. Trust me on this, Elias. You don't want entanglement." He picked up his coffee and left me adrift in the fluorescent hum. I sat, the silence pressing in, wrestling with the ghost in room 2113 and Ronan's chilling pragmatism. One path offered safety, paved with complicity. The other, unknown peril, but perhaps a clear conscience. My decision solidified. I retrieved the phone, dialed. Waiting for the connection, I fought to steady the frantic beating of my heart. Whatever followed, this was irrevocable. 911, what is the nature of your emergency? The operator's voice was calm, distant. I inhaled raggedly. "I need," I said, my own voice unsteady, "to report a murder at the Sunset Inn, room 2113. As I began the impossible narrative, a prickling sensation crawled across my skin. The empty break room felt suddenly populated by unseen eyes. Was he listening still? I was alone. For now. The future was a terrifying blank, yet one truth resonated. Life after tonight was irrevocably altered. The horror of that room was now part of me, a shadow I could never outrun. I had chosen my path. Now, I could only hope it led somewhere other than destruction. It was the mimicry that first unsettled me, that inaugural night. Seeking respite from the day's long unwinding, I'd sought the balcony, my palm flat against the coarse grain of the aged railing. Beneath my weight, the timbers sighed, a soft complaint. And then, distinctly, a second sigh, lagging just behind mine, a spectral resonance. Wind, perhaps? A settling joist? Yet the cadence was too perfect, a shadow cast in sound. A prickle, cold and insistent, traced my nape, a sensation I willed away. Solitude is my sole companion within these walls. The house itself possesses modest dimensions, yet the sprawling yard, a theater of towering, sentinel trees, lends it an air of vastness. From the balcony, my stage, the view overlooks this sylvan enclosure. By day, tranquility reigns, sunlight dapples through leaves, birdsong drifts on the breeze. But with nightfall, a transformation occurs. The woods surrounding us plunge into a Stygian depth I've never before witnessed. Foliage whispers with amplified urgency, and the balcony's ancient planks seem to hold their breath, brittle under the cloak of darkness. Night, too, saw me return, near the witching hour. A foolish notion spurred me. Confront the nocturnal balcony, acclimatized through sheer will. Flashlight clutched, I breached the threshold. One step, silence, A second, stillness. Then, I held my ground, listening, my pulse a frantic drum against my ribs. The torch beam trembled, a nervous spotlight. Seconds stretched taut. A faint protest from the wood beneath my left heel. Barely a shift in weight. Nothing, I reasoned. Then, behind me, another groan. Heavier this time, the unmistakable sound of someone settling their footing. I whirled, slicing the darkness with light. Empty, utterly vacant. Just me, bathed in cold sweat despite the chill air. My gut clenched, breath hitched shallow in my throat. Scrutinizing the floorboards yielded nothing. No obvious flaw, no loose plank. Stepping experimentally here, then there, produced inconsistent creaks, a frustrating lack of pattern. Yet the conviction persisted, absolute and bone deep. I was not alone. Propped against the railing, I peered into the impenetrable yard. Leaves rustled in the blackness beyond the flashlight's frail reach. A few tense minutes passed before I retreated, the click of the lock echoing my haste. The ensuing days were dedicated to the mundane, unpacking cartons, arranging furniture, forging a semblance of routine. Daylight bleached the strangeness away. Even tentative ventures onto the balcony revealed nothing amiss. The wood groaned predictably, singularly, underfoot. No phantom echoes. Self-deception bloomed. Perhaps it had been mere imagination, the strain of the move. But a week hence, under the stark illumination of a full moon, the illusion shattered. I'd stepped out merely to secure rattling shutters, perhaps steal a glance at the lunar face. The instant my boot met the first plank, it cried out. Immediately, its counterpoint sounded behind me, sharp, undeniable. My heart leapt. I froze. Pearlescent light bathed the scene, etching every detail. Railing, door, vacant space. My gaze snagged on a corner patch, darker, slick-looking. Then came the whispers, faint, sibilant, like hushed voices conferring nearby. Words remained elusive, yet the impression was one of illicit intimacy, of secrets shared. Breath caught in my throat. I strained to listen. The susurrus faded, swelled again. The fine hairs on my arms lifted. Mouth dry as dust, I kept the door propped ajar with my foot, a desperate escape route. Logic screamed retreat, yet paralysis held me fast. A profound certainty washed over me. Something stood beside me, invisible, sharing my vigil over the moonlit yard. My shoulder tightened reflexively, anticipating a touch that never came. 10 seconds, perhaps, stretched into an eternity before the murmuring ceased. A ragged gasp escaped me as I stumbled backward into the relative safety of the house. The door slammed shut, the lock thrown home with trembling fingers. My legs were unsteady reeds. Collapsing onto the living room sofa, I wrestled with the experience. Old houses settle, don't they? Wind plays tricks, carries sounds. Rationalizations felt flimsy, hollow counterweights to the visceral certainty I harbored. The television flickered to life, a bulwark against the silence. Sleep remained elusive for hours, my eyes repeatedly drawn to the shadowed outline of the balcony door. For several nights, the balcony remained forbidden territory. Curtains stayed drawn post-sunset. I confined myself to the house's opposite end. Yet, curiosity gnawed, a persistent itch demanding to be scratched. Understanding became an imperative. On the 4th night, I resolved to test the phenomena anew. 2 a.m. offered peak stillness, optimal acoustics for listening. Hand on the doorknob, I hesitated, slick sweat coating my palm, my heart a heavy stone in my chest. I turned the knob, stepped out. The wood groaned, its echo followed, fractionally delayed, unnervingly close. A phantom pacing just behind my shoulder. A swift turn revealed only emptiness. My fingers fumbled for the flashlight clipped to my belt, its beam sweeping the floorboards, probing each corner. Nothing. A difficult swallow. I advanced cautiously. A board squeaked ahead. Its spectral twin answered. My skin crawled. A faint scent reached me then. Old timber, the musty perfume of damp earth. Then, a delicate clink, glass kissing wood, emanating from the balcony's far end. My light found only the railing and a small bare table I'd yet to move. No vessel rested upon it. The sound repeated, a tiny, distinct chime. Breath hitched. My grip on the flashlight became bone white. Sweat traced a cold path down my temple. Silence descended, thick and watchful, only to be broken by a muted, scuffling shuffle. Two pairs of feet, it seemed, moving furtively near each other. Eyes darted wildly. No one. Tension coiled in my neck, my shoulders rigid slabs of stone. A brief pause, where my own ragged breathing dominated the night. Before comprehension could dawn, the whispers returned, terrifyingly intimate, breathed directly beside my ear. Shock sent the flashlight tumbling from my grasp, clattering across the planks. As it rolled away, the whispers dissolved into a low, resonant hum. Simultaneously, a cool draft brushed my skin, though the air hung utterly still. Tears of pure stress welled. Clutching the railing for support, I stared into the lightless yard, waiting, expecting... what? Silhouettes coalescing from shadow? Shapes emerging under the moon's indifferent gaze. But the yard remained stubbornly vacant, animated only by the gentle sway of unseen trees. A minute passed, maybe two. With excruciating slowness, I stooped to retrieve the flashlight, my hands betraying me with violent tremors. It took several fumbling attempts to grasp the cylinder. I clicked it off. Its light felt useless now, almost mocking. Escape was the only imperative. I scrambled back inside, slamming the door, twisting the lock with fervent finality. My breathing came in ragged bursts. My shirt clung damply to my back. That night, sleep was a forgotten country. Mornings consistently restored the balcony's innocuous facade. Under the sun's scrutiny, the wood felt solid, dependable. Fresh air cleansed the space. Warmth seeped into the planks. Deliberate pacing produced only the expected complaints of old timber. No spectral accompaniment, no sibilant murmurs. Just an ordinary platform of wood. Yet, as twilight bled into night, it underwent a chilling metamorphosis, imbued with a vitality that felt ancient, watchful, haunted, or merely resonant. The distinction remained elusive. A hunt for answers commenced. I sifted through brittle papers inherited with the house, maintenance logs, roofing receipts, even a previous owner's note mentioning the balcony's eventual need for replacement. Nothing hinted at spectral tenants or inexplicable acoustics. A visual inspection beneath revealed only weathered support beams draped in cobwebs. The mundane skeleton of the structure, offering no enlightenment. Night after night, the attendant footsteps materialized upon my egress. Sometimes a distinct, echoing tread. Other times, a mere supplementary creak, a subtle shuffle just beyond perception. Moon-drenched nights remained the most potent, unleashing the whispers, those disembodied colloquies, intimate yet indecipherable, hinting at urgent, hidden compacts. They burrowed beneath my skin. Anxiety became my daytime shadow. Any unexpected groan of the house's old bones sent my heart into a panicked rhythm, bracing for the sounds that were not my own. One evening, a different strategy. I positioned a chair on the balcony before sunset, intending to witness the transition from dusk to deep night, to observe the very moment the strangeness awoke. Around 6, as the sun dipped below the tree line, painting the sky in bruised colors, the temperature fell. I sat, sipping water, watching the woods gather shadows. For a time, stillness prevailed, but as darkness deepened, so did the tension coiling within me. An abrupt groan from the wood beneath the chair legs, followed instantly by its phantom twin. My fingers clamped onto the chair's arms, pulse accelerating. A breeze sighed through the branches overhead, and suddenly, the very air felt weighted, expectant. I waited, scarcely breathing, straining for footfall or whisper. The chill intensified. Gooseflesh pebbled my arms. An hour past sundown, the first whisper materialized. Soft, conversational, seemingly originating several feet away. Yet the balcony held only me. I surged to my feet, the chair scraping harshly against the planks. Instantly, a second scrape mirrored mine, a ghostly accompaniment. Nausea churned. Reaching for the door, I hesitated, compelled by a morbid need to see, to know. "Is anyone there?" The words emerged thin, unsteady, tinged with a desperation I'd loathed. Silence answered, absolute. Then, behind me, the floorboards protested. 1 step, 2. A wave of warmth brushed the back of my neck, an impossible intimacy suggesting someone stood mere inches away. Breath tore through my lungs. I spun, encountering only vacant air, the impassive railing. Turning back, I watched, transfixed, as the door handle vibrated, turned slightly on its axis, then stilled. A single, paralyzing thought eclipsed all others. Inside. Now. I stumbled through the doorway, slammed it shut, through the lock. The curtains were yanked closed with violent finality. Back on the sofa, the phantom proximity lingered, a chilling pressure even after I'd moved. My neck and shoulders throbbed, rigid with accumulated dread. Now, dusk signals retreat. The balcony remains unclaimed territory once the sun departs, its threshold uncrossed, its view obscured by drawn curtains. Every light within the house blazes against the encroaching dark as I seek refuge in books or the television's drone. Yet, some nights, the sounds persist. The slow, deliberate tread of footsteps pacing the boards outside my sealed door. Once, the low murmuring continued for nearly 30 minutes, a tormenting susurrus just beyond the barrier. I sat frozen in the living room, heart hammering against my ribs, staring at the door until blessed silence returned. Recording it? Documenting the evidence? The thought terrifies me, the potential confirmation of its chilling reality. Is there some mundane, structural defect? An acoustic anomaly, bouncing neighbors' distant noises? Logic offers these thin shields by day. But late at night, hearing those second steps, feeling that invisible companion beside me, reason evaporates. A vice tightens around my chest, leaving only the desperate yearning for dawn. Perhaps answers will surface eventually. Perhaps. Deep down, certainty wavers. I know only this. When night descends, that simple wooden platform transforms. It becomes something other, something watchful, and I lack the courage to face it alone. Etched into the ancient bark, glyphs hummed, a resonance vibrating not just in the wood, but in the air itself, pulling my gaze, then my steps, off the familiar path and into the tangled heartwood. 10 years I'd walked these trails, warden of Blackwood Preserve, Ilara Vance by name. I breathed its seasons, knew the sigh of its pines, the scuttle of its hidden life. Or so the illusion went. That day began like any other, under an autumn sky the color of bruised plums, the forest floor a tapestry of decay and crushed leaves beneath my boots. Hours deep, where sunlight fractured through the canopy, a discordant note snagged my attention. A sentinel oak scarred not by blight or blade, but by deliberate, intricate sigils. No casual graffiti this. The lines flowed with an archaic precision, alien yet hauntingly familiar, like echoes of forgotten sagas. A lambent light throbbed within the grooves, a slow, internal cadence. Hesitantly, drawn by a force beyond reason, my fingertips brushed the carving. A shock, electric and cold, snapped up my arm, staggering me. The woods warped, colors bled into hyper-saturation, sounds sharpened to painful clarity, and the wind carried whispers, sibilant fragments of a tongue long dead. Instinct screamed retreat. Protocol demanded documentation. My camera, however, refused. The display dissolved into static snow when aimed at the glyphs, as if the symbols repelled scrutiny. I logged the coordinates, a futile gesture against the rising tide of the uncanny. Then, another marked tree and another, beckoning me off-trail, a breadcrumb path laid by unknown hands. Prudence warred with a deeper, primal urge to know. I plunged onward. The forest closed in, branches knitting into a suffocating vault overhead. The air grew thick, cloying, tasting of damp earth and ozone, pierced by the incessant susurrant voices swirling just beyond hearing. Time lost all meaning before I broke through the undergrowth into an unexpected emptiness. A perfect circle of megaliths clawed at the sky, each 10 feet of lichen-kissed stone ablaze with the same pulsing script, their collective light painting the clearing in ethereal tones. Within their embrace, the earth was scraped bare, dark and unnervingly fertile, and at the circle's heart, a slab of rock stained a deep, horrific crimson, surrounded by a chilling tableau. Bleached bones, iridescent feathers, geometries of crystal that defied earthly logic, and other unnameable detritus of nightmare. My breath hitched, trapped between disbelief and terror. A dry snap echoed behind me. I spun, heart hammering against my ribs. An old man stood there, materializing from the gloom like a figure woven from shadow and root. His face, a roadmap of wrinkles, held an unnerving gravity. "This sanctuary is not for the uninvited," he rasped, his voice like grinding stones. Even as I fumbled for words, silent shapes detached themselves from the surrounding trees, figures cloaked in midnight hues, cowls swallowing their features, moving with a fluid, unsettling quiet. They formed a loose cordon, sealing the clearing. "What is this place?" The question tore from my throat, thin and reedy. What are you?" A flicker of something ancient and weary crossed the old man's eyes. "We are the custodians," he stated, the words resonating with quiet authority. "We tend the fading embers, the deep magic woven into the marrow of this world." Magic? The word hung in the air, preposterous. "That's not possible." A dry chuckle escaped him. "The world holds more currents than your maps reveal, Warden." As if to punctuate his claim, he lifted a weathered hand. Instantly, the glyphs on the standing stones erupted, searing the air with incandescent light. The whispers escalated into a roaring vortex of sound, and a low thrum vibrated up through the soles of my boots, the very earth groaning. Terror clawed at me. I lurched backward, seeking escape, only to find the robed figures impassive, immutable obstacles. "A threshold stands before you," the custodian declared, his voice cutting through the din. "Cross it, learn our secrets, become a thread in this ancient tapestry. Or..." The unspoken alternative hung heavy, suffocating. My mind raced, a trapped bird beating against the bars of impossibility. "Why me?" I stammered, buying moments I didn't have. How could I be chosen? From beneath one cowl, a voice emerged, sexless and serene as falling snow. "The wood perceives. It guided your steps. It senses the resonance within you." "This is madness," I whispered, shaking my head. "I'm just a ranger." The custodian stepped closer, his gaze pinning me. "There are no accidents in the deep currents, Warden. Only arrivals. Will you answer the call?" The air thickened further, charged and electric, the pulsing light and sound converging into an unbearable pressure. The forest itself seemed poised, expectant. Fear was a cold knot in my gut, urging flight, normalcy, sanity. Yet, beneath it, a strange current stirred, a terrifying, exhilarating curiosity about this hidden world, this power humming beneath the surface of reality. Escape seemed impossible, disbelief a luxury I couldn't afford. Taking a ragged breath that did little to calm the storm within, I met the custodian's gaze. "If I agree," my voice was surprisingly firm, "what awaits me?" A flicker, perhaps approval, in his ancient eyes. An awakening, knowledge beyond your reckoning, wonders and trials alike. The path is not gentle. The risks were immense, the known world dissolving behind me, but turning back felt like a deeper betrayal, a denial of something profound stirring within. "I accept," I heard myself say. "Teach me." The custodian nodded, a grave finality settling over the clearing. "So be it. Let the unmaking commence." The robed figures raised their arms, and a low, resonant chant unfurled, weaving itself into the existing whispers, braiding sound into power. The megaliths flared, white-hot, bathing the clearing in blinding light. Energy, raw and untamed, slammed into me, a torrent that ripped through flesh and bone. It was agony and rapture intertwined, a shattering and reforming compressed into an eternal second. I collapsed, gasping, onto the bare earth. When awareness returned, the world was irrevocably altered. Colors possessed impossible depth. Textures screamed their secrets against my skin. The lifeblood of the forest pulsed like my own heartbeat. And the whispers, they were no longer noise, but language, clear and resonant within my mind. A weathered hand helped me rise. The custodian's face held a flicker of something akin to pride. "Welcome, initiate," he murmured. "Your true existence starts now." The cowled figures drew closer, not menacing now, but acknowledging, accepting. I glanced back towards the unseen trail, the mundane reality I'd inhabited mere hours before, already feeling like a half-forgotten dream. Ilara Vance, ranger of Blackwood Preserve, was a skin shed and left behind. What lay ahead, the trials, the revelations, the burden of this ancient magic, remained veiled. Yet, standing there, reborn in that circle of impossible power, a strange calm settled over me. The forest had called, and I had answered. Deeper we walked, away from sunlight and map trails, into the shadowed core of the preserve, leaving the known world to dwindle behind us. How many other thresholds lay hidden beneath familiar leaves, I wondered. How many other souls might stumble across such boundaries, their lives irrevocably rerouted? The wild places guarded secrets far deeper than any Park Service manual could catalog. And now, I too was one of them. The nocturnal world had always been Ilara's sanctuary, a realm she believed utterly her own during those late-hour ambles. Under the muted glow of infrequent street lamps, amidst the slumbering houses and the whisper of far-off engines, solitude wrapped around her like a comforting shroud. It was a silence profound and restorative. Yet, on this particular night, venturing down an artery of asphalt previously unknown, that cherished peace fractured, dissolving into an unfamiliar prickle of dread. She hadn't intended a pilgrimage, merely a brief circuit to unravel the day's knots. Midnight loomed, or perhaps had already passed, the air holding the first brittle edge of autumn, sharp enough to sting the lungs. The allure of these walks lay in their profound stillness, the sensation of a world holding its breath before the dawn. No clamor, no demands, only the steady cadence of her soles on the pavement, the sighing passage of wind through unseen leaves. Sodium lamps cast elongated, dancing specters across the concrete, their intermittent flicker a slow pulse in the darkness. Homes stood inert, windows like vacant eyes, their inhabitants surrendered to dreams. A neighborhood defined by its quietude, its predictable suburban slumber. But tonight, an alien current ran beneath the calm. Then she saw it, a sliver of a lane wedged between two darkened properties, almost swallowed by shadow, untouched by the nearest streetlight's pale wash. Trees lining its entrance seemed to conspire, their branches knitting together overhead, forming a tenebrous archway. A pause, a flicker of hesitation. Ilara stared into its unlit depths, a peculiar magnetism drawing her gaze. Logically, it was just another street, unremarkable. Yet, something felt dissonant. The air here possessed a palpable weight, pressing down, thick with an unnerving stillness. Prudence urged retreat, a return to the familiar loop, but an inexplicable compulsion guided her feet forward, crossing the threshold into the waiting dark before conscious thought could intervene. The deeper she walked, the more absolute the silence became. The city's distant thrum vanished entirely, leaving only the sound of her own respiration, the whisper-soft crunch of her shoes on unseen debris. Looming, venerable houses flanked the way, their windows obsidian panes reflecting nothing. No lamplight pierced their gloom, no hint of life stirred within. Only an insistent, unnerving sensation persisted, the feeling of being observed, as if the very structures possessed a hidden sentience, their gaze tracking her from the folds of shadow. Her stride unconsciously quickened, propelled by an unease she couldn't name. The lane stretched onward, longer than any map of the area would suggest, bending at angles that felt fundamentally wrong. Ilara, usually possessed of an unerring internal compass, felt adrift, navigating a path that seemed to have materialized solely for her passage, an anomaly stitched into the fabric of the known neighborhood. It began subtly, the sound. Barely audible at first, a faint percussion carried on the still air, a delicate rhythmic tapping, like hesitant knuckles against old wood. She froze, head cocked, straining to pinpoint the source. It seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere, simultaneously. A swift scan revealed nothing but the empty lane stretching before and behind her. Just the wind rattling a loose drainpipe, perhaps, or a branch skittering across a roof. She rationalized, dismissed it. Yet, as she resumed walking, the tapping intensified, louder now, falling into a steady, deliberate cadence. It mimicked her own footfalls, a ghostly echo dogging her steps. Again, she stopped. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Slowly, deliberately, she pivoted, half expecting a confrontation, a figure lurking just beyond perception. But the lane behind her remained deserted, a corridor of silent houses receding into the impenetrable night. And with her stillness, the tapping ceased. Silence descended once more, broken only by the ragged sound of her own breath. She stood suspended in that quiet dread, logic battling instinct, trying to banish the chilling certainty that she was not alone. She moved again, faster this time, almost a shuffle. Instantly, the tapping returned, louder still, insistent, demanding attention. Panic flared. Her walk escalated into a jog, breath tearing from her lungs in shallow gasps. The houses on either side began to swim in her peripheral vision, dark shapes melting together. Orientation dissolved. She was merely fleeing now, desperate to escape the unseen pursuer whose rhythm matched her own frantic pace. The lane twisted improbably, the houses seeming to warp, growing taller, more distorted in the gloom. A disorienting sense of circularity gripped her. Was she running in place, trapped within some impossible loop? And then, she saw it. Further down the lane, a silhouette cut from the deeper dark, stationed at the edge of the pavement, utterly motionless, watching. Details remained elusive, just the stark outline of a humanoid form. Tall, unnaturally slender, its head canted slightly, as if listening to something Ilara couldn't hear. A cold fist clenched in her stomach. Every nerve screamed retreat, flight in the opposite direction. Yet her limbs were leaden, her feet seemingly fused to the ground. She could only stare, transfixed by the figure's impossible stillness, its silent vigil. It offered no movement, no sound. It simply waited. The tapping erupted anew, shockingly loud, terrifyingly close, as if right beside her ear. She whirled around, a choked cry escaping her lips. Nothing. Only the vacant lane stretching back into the suffocating darkness. Her gaze snapped back to where the figure had stood. Gone. The space was empty, the sidewalk bare, the houses resuming their silent watch. She didn't linger. Wheeling around, she fled, sprinting now, lungs burning, feet pounding against the unseen ground. The tapping pursued, echoing relentlessly through the night, accelerating, right at her heels, a frantic percussion chasing her down the impossible street. Ahead, a faint, familiar luminescence promised salvation, the glow of a street lamp on the main thoroughfare. Safety. She burst from the oppressive confines of the dark lane onto the brightly lit road, collapsing against a lamppost, heart thrashing, legs trembling violently. The instant her feet hit the illuminated pavement, the tapping vanished. Utter silence fell behind her. She risked a glance back. The narrow, unlit opening she had emerged from seemed to have receded, dissolved into the solid darkness between the houses, as if it had never existed. She remained there for long moments, gasping for air, grappling with the unreality of the preceding minutes. No explanation surfaced, no rational cause for the primal fear that still vibrated through her. The lane was gone, the figure vanished. Yet the chilling sensation of being followed lingered, a cold shadow imprinted on her mind. Ilara never walked at night again. Some silences aren't empty. They resonate, thick with the dust of forgotten moments. Such was the stillness that greeted Ilara the instant she crossed the threshold of the forsaken Pharos. A quietude so profound it seemed to compress the very air, weighting each inhalation. Her visit was meant to be fleeting, a brief indulgence of whim, yet the tower exerted a strange magnetism, a reluctance to release its unexpected guest. By the time the true nature of that grip became undeniable, retreat was no longer an option. The ocean's call had always echoed within her. A childhood spent tracing the coastline, gathering sea-smooth treasures from the shingle, mesmerized by the relentless dialogue between wave and rock, had etched its rhythm onto her soul. So, when whispers surfaced of the derelict lighthouse, a skeletal finger pointing skyward just leagues away, the compulsion to investigate was immediate. Decades it had stood vacant, surrendered to wind and salt, a phantom landmark many locals had forgotten, perched on a jagged promontory, invisible save to those who sought it. Impulse alone governed her departure. No soul knew her destination. Local lore painted the structure with eerie hues. Tales of spectral glows glimpsed from shore, inexplicable noises carried on the night breeze. Dismissible phantoms, surely, born of neglect and shadow. Besides, her venture was planned for the clarity of afternoon, a swift reconnaissance for photographs, and the sating of a restless curiosity. Her vehicle abandoned where the dirt track dissolved into wilderness, Ilara trekked onward, the path a serpentine suggestion through wind-lashed grasses and stony earth. With altitude came a keener wind, a salty exhalation from the sea that misted the cliff face. Then, rounding a final bluff, it materialized, solitary, stark against the pewter canvas of the sky. Larger than imagined, its cyclopean stone skin bore the scars of time, fissures spiderwebbing its surface, windows blinded with crude boards. Though the lamp atop was long extinguished, the tower retained a brooding authority, an impression of sentience, as if it observed her approach. Proximity amplified a nascent disquiet. The way it dominated the cliff's edge, casting an elongated shadow that seemed to claw at the ground, sent an electric shiver across Ilara's skin. An old building, she reasoned, inanimate stone and mortar, nothing more. She reached the entrance, the door hanging slack on corroded hinges, barely clinging to its frame. A pause, her hand hovering, then the decisive push inward. Stale air, heavy with brine and the perfume of decay, met her. Gloom reigned within, pierced only by slivers of light leaking through the boarded fenestration. Detritus littered the floor, shattered remnants of furniture, splintered wood, mangled pieces of unidentifiable machinery. Years, clearly, had passed since any human presence disturbed this interior mausoleum. Ilara drew her phone, its beam slicing the Stygian dark, revealing the helical ascent of a metal staircase coiling upwards. Rusted, yes, but seemingly sound. She began to climb, drawn by the promise of the vista above. Each step groaned under her weight, the protest reverberating against the cold stone curvature. The ascent felt strangely arduous, the atmosphere thickening, compressing with every upward spiral. Breathless, chest tight, she finally emerged into the lantern room. It mirrored the dereliction below. The great lamp mechanism, a skeleton of rusted metal, stood broken. Grime obscured the glass panes, rendering the outside world a murky blur. But it was a small, dust-shrouded table tucked in a corner that snagged her attention. Upon it lay a journal, ancient and weathered. Its pages tinged the color of old parchment. Gently, she lifted it, disturbing decades of settled dust. The leather binding was cracked, the pages brittle beneath her touch. She eased it open, anticipating the meticulous logs of some forgotten lightkeeper. Instead, a jolt, colder than the sea wind, shot through her. The pages were dense with frantic, looping script, words tumbling over each other, barely decipherable. Much was incoherent rambling, obsessive passages about the light, the imperative to keep it burning, always burning. Yet, the deeper she read, the more chilling it became. The author, consumed, documented a descent into madness. They wrote of shapes perceived in the depths, submarine shadows gliding beneath the waves, phantom lights winking at the edge of vision. Whispers were mentioned, insidious murmurs echoing within the tower's confines after dark. And then, a passage that froze the marrow in her bones. The light failed tonight. Blame the storm, but I know different now. They are coming. I hear them. Inside the walls. Ilara snapped the journal closed, her pulse a frantic drum against her ribs. An old book, she insisted silently. Tales spun from isolation and fear. Yet the words clung, the escalating desperation palpable in the deteriorating script. She replaced the volume, her gaze sweeping the confined space, a sudden, acute sense of vulnerability washing over her. That was when she heard it, a faint, rhythmic tap-tap-tapping emanating from somewhere below. She froze, straining to listen. The wind howled outside, rattling the window boards, but this sound possessed a different quality. It was measured, deliberate, a knocking from within. Turning towards the stairwell, her phone's beam trembled as she directed it down the spiral cavity. The tapping persisted, swelling in volume. Cold perspiration prickled her nape. She was not alone. The urge to flee, to hurtle down those steps and burst into the open air, was overwhelming. Yet, an invisible force held her captive. Perhaps fierce paralysis. Perhaps the tower's own suffocating will. Motionless, she remained. Silence fell abruptly. Utter, profound silence, amplifying the ragged sound of her own breathing. The wind outside seemed to hold its breath. Tentatively, heart hammering, she took a step towards the stairs. Before her foot found purchase, it came again. A voice, hushed, scarcely more than breath, yet seeming to issue from the very stone around her. Turn it back on. Raw terror surged through Ilara. She stumbled backward, her phone slipping from nerveless fingers, clattering onto the stone floor. The beam convulsed, flickered, and died, plunging the room into absolute blackness. She scrabbled blindly, hands shaking, searching for the fallen light. The voice returned, louder now, insistent. Turn it back on. Her fingers closed around the phone. She clicked the switch, the resurrected beam dancing wildly across the empty chamber. No one. The room was precisely as she'd found it. But the voice, it hadn't come from outside. It had resonated from within the walls. Breath shallow, thoughts scattering like startled birds, she backed towards the stairs. Escape. Now. But as she reached the uppermost step, the floorboards beneath her groaned, and suddenly the immense weight of the lighthouse seemed to bear down. A sentient pressure, The structure itself, alive, watchful, waiting. She bolted, taking the stairs 2, 3 at a time, her footfalls echoing like gunshots in the confined shaft. The air grew colder as she descended, the tapping resuming, louder, more demanding. Reaching the bottom, heart threatening to rupture her chest, she flung the door wide and lurched out into the gray afternoon, gasping as the cold wind slapped her face. She didn't stop running until she reached the cliff's precipice, the lighthouse looming behind, a dark, mute sentinel. She risked no backward glance. Reaching her car, she slammed the door, ignition catching, tires spitting gravel as she sped away, hands slick and trembling on the wheel. Many times since, Ilara has revisited that day in the theater of her mind, dissecting each moment, seeking rational explanation. But the experience remains impervious to logic. The voice from the stone, the insistent tapping, the crushing presence of the place, their reality is indelible. She has never returned. The Friday night commute bled into Saturday morning, dragging Leo homeward through Denver's emptying veins. Bone-weary, he yearned for his apartment. The freeway, an unusually vacant ribbon, unwinding beneath his tires. Midnight had struck, and the darkness felt thick, almost suffocating, pressing against the car windows. Sparse neon from skeletal gas stations bled onto the asphalt, throwing distorted, dancing shadows. 12:15 a.m. blinked on the dash display. The city's usual cacophony had dissolved into a thin silence, punctuated only by a distant canine lament and the dry rustle of unseen leaves. Thoughts drifted towards the weekend sanctuary, camaraderie with friends, the promise of blessed inertia. Fatigue laid heavy hands on his eyelids. Highway 70 surged into view, a stark obsidian path slicing the nocturnal void. His headlamps carved cones of light from the emptiness, illuminating vacant lanes, occasionally flashing past another vehicle swallowed too quickly by the dark to register. The landscape offered little solace. Skeletal trees clawing at the sky, flat, indifferent earth, and the hypnotic monotony of the road itself. Perhaps 15 miles dissolved behind him when a silhouette materialized at the roadside. A stranded motorist, perhaps? The shape was cloaked in a coat that looked ancient and weathered, clutching something indistinct. A torch, maybe. Leo eased off the accelerator, a nervous flutter starting at his chest. Solitude at this hour felt unnatural, vaguely threatening. He guided the car onto the shoulder, the engine settling into a soft thrum. Behind him, the highway plunged into impenetrable black, save for the weak glow of his own lights and the far-off glimmer of sparse street lamps. Rolling down the window, the cool night air rushed in. "Evening," Leo called out. "Need a lift somewhere?" The figure remained frozen for a beat, then began a measured walk towards the car. Shadows obscured the face, but an unsettling deliberateness marked the movement. Closer now, Leo saw hands that trembled almost imperceptibly, eyes darting with a hunted energy. "Yes, a ride would be appreciated." The voice emerged, low and gravelly, tinged with an accent Leo couldn't quite place. Slavic, maybe? A moment's hesitation warred with the late hour, and a strange, illogical sense that companionship might be safer than solitude. "All right, climb in," he offered, thumbing the lock. The passenger slipped inside swiftly, settling into the dimness of the back seat, offering only clipped nods as Leo merged back onto the highway. A glance in the rearview mirror revealed eyes fixed forward, seemingly gazing through the very fabric of the car, into the endless night ahead. Silence stretched between them, thick and uncomfortable, broken only by the engine's drone and the occasional gritty crunch of the tires. Leo attempted small talk, queries about direction, but received only monosyllabic murmurs or silence. 10 minutes crawled by. So, he tried again, keeping his tone light. "Whereabouts are you heading?" Finally, a response, barely louder than a breath. "Home. I seem to have lost my way." A nod, simple enough. "Which way did you come from?" A vague gesture towards the left, into darkness, impenetrable. "Sycamore Lane, but I'm turned around now." Leo consulted the map glowing on his phone. Sycamore Lane wasn't far back, near the husk of the old Vance Mill. "There's a service station up ahead, maybe 5 miles. We can pull in there if you need." Another nod, but the tension in the passenger's posture remained palpable. He drove on, miles spooling out like dark thread. The night seemed to deepen, the darkness outside acquiring a tangible weight. 20 minutes later, a flicker in the rearview mirror snagged his attention. A fluid shadow pacing the car just beyond his peripheral vision. He snapped his head around. Nothing. Just empty asphalt reflecting the taillights. His heart gave a startled leap. Another glance back. The lane beside them remained utterly vacant. Imagination, surely. Fatigue playing tricks. He forced his focus back to the road, but the sensation of being watched prickled at the back of his neck. Was the shadow still there, just outside the light? He adjusted the mirror again. Empty. The highway curved gently ahead, headlamps slicing feebly into the gloom. As they rounded the bend, the skeletal frame of a derelict farmhouse emerged from the darkness beside the road. Boarded windows gaped like empty sockets. The porch sagged defeatedly. An involuntary shiver traced its way down Leo's spine. "That's the old Vance place," he offered, aiming for casualness. "Supposedly empty for decades." The passenger stirred, breaking the long silence. "It has an air this time of night." Leo managed a tight, nervous laugh. "Yeah, definitely on the spooky side." They passed the farmhouse, but the feeling of unseen scrutiny intensified. His grip tightened on the wheel. Another glance at the passenger, still staring resolutely forward. Suddenly, the car jolted violently, hitting an unseen pothole, and the engine emitted a choked gasp. Leo swore under his breath, pulling onto the shoulder and killing the engine. "Okay, hang on. Let me just see what that was." The passenger remained motionless, eyes tracking him as he climbed out. Flashlight beam cutting the dark, he peered under the hood. Everything looked superficially normal. Road grime, the familiar tangle of components. No obvious damage. "Looks okay," he called back, sliding back into the driver's seat. "Just a nasty bump." The engine restarted smoothly, purring as if nothing had happened. Leo drew a shaky breath, willing his pulse to slow. "Right, let's keep moving. Station isn't far now." As they drove, the road seemed to constrict, trees crowding closer, their branches like grasping fingers. The headlight beams felt weaker, swallowed by the encroaching blackness. He found himself casting increasingly frequent glances towards the silent figure in the back, whose very stillness felt profoundly unnerving. Another 10 minutes, and the blessed, flickering neon of the service station bloomed ahead. Relief washed through Leo, potent and immediate. "There we are, pulling in." He swung into the brightly lit forecourt, cutting the engine. "Okay, we're here. Grab whatever you need." The passenger nodded, hand moving towards a pocket. "My thanks." Leo unlocked the doors, but before the passenger could move, an inexplicable gust of wind slammed through the open lot, carrying an unnatural chill that bit deep, raising goosebumps despite the car's residual warmth. "You all right?" Leo asked, startled. A nod, but the hands were visibly trembling now. "Yes, just a sudden cold." Leo went to the pump, the familiar routine of refueling feeling strangely detached. He kept glancing back at the car, at the passenger staring fixedly ahead. This wasn't right. A deep-seated wrongness hummed beneath the surface of the mundane scene. Tank full, he returned to the driver's seat, the unease clinging like damp fog. The passenger was still silent, gaze locked on the road beyond the windshield. "Okay, let's get you closer to home," Leo said, turning the ignition key. As he pulled out of the lot, he risked one more look at his passenger. They had turned their head now, staring intently out the side window at something Leo couldn't see in the darkness. A knot tightened in his gut. "Everything okay back there?" The passenger turned to face him, and Leo saw the eyes properly for the first time. Pale, depthless, almost hollow. "I believe," the raspy voice said softly, "you should continue without me." Leo frowned, confused. "What? But you need to get home." A slow shake of the head, the expression distant, detached. "No, you need to leave. Immediately." Before Leo could frame a question, a high-pitched metallic screech tore through the night air, originating from the service station. He whipped his head around. The station's cheerful lights flickered violently, dimmed, then died, plunging the forecourt back into near-total darkness. The silence that followed was absolute, profound, broken only by the mournful howl of the wind through unseen trees. What the hell is happening? Panic began to claw its way up his throat. The passenger offered no answer. Instead, their form began to waver, becoming indistinct, translucent, like smoke coalescing and dissolving simultaneously. Leo's eyes widened in stark disbelief. "Wait! What are you—" He reached out instinctively, his hand passing cleanly through the space where the passenger had been mere seconds before. "No, don't." The form dissipated entirely, leaving the back seat starkly, impossibly empty. He sat frozen, heart hammering against his ribs, mind scrambling to reconcile the impossible. Hallucination? Sheer exhaustion manifesting? "Okay, Leo," he muttered, voice trembling. "Tired, just tired. Get home." He jammed the car into gear and sped away from the darkened, silent station, its memory already feeling like a fever dream. Yet the highway felt altered. The air inside the car was frigid, his breath misting. An oppressive silence had descended, heavier than before. 5 miles further, another faint silhouette stood by the roadside. His heart seized. Not again. He gripped the wheel, knuckles white. Slowing, bracing himself, he saw the figure remain utterly still, simply watching. He pulled over again, engine idling nervously, cracking the window just an inch. "Hey, you need another ride?" Silence. The figure didn't twitch. Dread, cold, and heavy, settled in his stomach. "Hello?" he called out, his voice cracking. Then, it began to move. A slow, deliberate, inexorable walk towards the car. Leo watched, transfixed, as it drew nearer, the face still lost in shadow. Raw panic surged. "Nope, gotta go," he choked out, slamming the gearshift and flooring the accelerator. As the car leaped forward, A frantic glance in the rearview mirror showed the figure standing exactly where he'd left it, motionless, watching him flee into the night. His mind was a chaotic whirl. Elaborate prank, stress-induced delusion, or something infinitely stranger. He pushed the car faster, needing distance, needing light. The car's interior felt like a tomb, the cold intensifying. The highway stretched on, an endless black moor. Miles later, the rhythmic flash of red and blue lights broke the darkness. A police cruiser parked on the shoulder. Relief warred with a new anxiety. Should I tell him? He pulled over. An officer approached, flashlight beam sweeping across Leo's face. "Everything all right, sir?" the officer asked, his voice calm, routine. Leo nodded quickly, struggling to sound normal. "Yeah, officer. Just needed to pull over for a second." The officer's gaze flickered past him, towards the passenger seat, then back. "Traveling alone tonight?" No," Leo stammered, gesturing vaguely at the empty seat beside him. "I picked up a hitchhiker back there." The officer's expression shifted subtly, a flicker of something knowing, weary. "Right, and they just weren't there anymore?" A cold fist clenched around Leo's heart. "How did you... What do you mean?" The officer sighed, a sound heavy with resignation. "We get reports. This stretch of 70, the phantom hitchhiker. Folks pick someone up, usually quiet, seems distressed. Then, poof, gone. Sometimes they see him again further down the road." Leo stared, the impossible events clicking into a terrifying kind of sense. "So that was..." Officer Kalen nodded gravely. "Clara Vance, most likely. Happened years ago. Tragic story. Look, best advice, just stay calm, keep driving. Don't stop again if you see her. I'll let you get on your way." He gave a brief nod, turned, and walked back to his cruiser, leaving Leo utterly alone on the vast, dark highway. He sat there for a long moment, the officer's words echoing, his hands shaking uncontrollably. Phantom hitchhiker, Clara Vance. It was real. Starting the car again, a strange mix of primal fear and perverse validation coursed through him. As he drove, the image of the fading passenger, the officer's somber confirmation, it all swirled in his mind. The road seemed longer now, each mile marker a small victory against the encroaching dread. He couldn't stop glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting, half dreading to see the pale eyes staring back. The remainder of the journey was a tense, sleepless blur. Finally, the distant glow of Denver emerged, a welcome anchor in the sea of darkness. Merging onto familiar, populated streets felt like surfacing from a deep, cold dive. The oppressive tension began to recede as Highway 70 fell further behind. He pulled into his apartment complex, the mundane glow of parking lot lights feeling like a sanctuary. Getting out of the car, he inhaled deeply, the city air sharp and real. The night had been an ordeal, etched into his memory. Inside, he double-locked the door, leaning against it, heart still racing. The silent passenger, the impossible vanishing, Officer Kalen's grim tale. It replayed relentlessly. Surreal. Yet the fear had been viscerally real. He checked his phone, seeking normalcy. A few mundane notifications, a message from a friend about a weekend getaway. He typed a quick confirmation, needing the distraction. Sinking onto the couch, sleep felt miles away. The phantom of Highway 70 lingered, a chilling presence in his thoughts. Ghost stories, haunted roads, abstract concepts until tonight. Now, he was part of one. Morning light didn't entirely dispel the unease. A strange curiosity, perhaps a need for validation, gnawed at him. He found himself driving back towards Highway 70, bathed in the ordinary light of day. The road hummed with traffic, the sun glinting off windshields. No sign of a lone figure by the roadside. No eerie stillness. He felt a pang of foolishness, yet the memory of the night's fear remained potent. Then, about halfway along the notorious stretch, he saw a car pulled over. A figure stood beside it, waving tentatively. As Leo approached, a jolt went through him. The figure bore a startling resemblance to his passenger from the night before. Heart pounding, he slowed. "Hey!" he called out, the words feeling strange, rehearsed. "Car trouble. Need a ride?" The man turned, offering a slight, unsettling smile. That would be a lifesaver. Heading towards Denver? "Yeah, hop in," Leo heard himself say, unlocking the passenger door. The man slid into the seat, murmuring thanks, then fell silent. The drive resumed, but Leo's attention was divided, constantly flicking to the rearview mirror. The passenger stared straight ahead, posture eerily reminiscent of the previous night. After several tense miles, Leo ventured, "So, where are you coming from?" A brief glance, then back to the road. Just passing through, Leo noted the hands resting calmly on the lap. "Need anything?" A slight shake of the head. "No, thank you. Just need to get home." That phrase again. A shiver traced its way down Leo's spine. "Okay, well, let me know." They drove in a heavy silence. Leo struggled to focus, deja vu battling with a rising sense of dread. Was this happening again? His phone suddenly rang, making him jump. It was his friend, checking on the weekend plans. Yeah, on my way now," Leo said, trying to keep his voice even. Hanging up, he glanced again at the passenger. Their eyes met for a fleeting second. Was that recognition, or something colder, more knowing? His heart hammered. You okay?" he asked, striving for normalcy. The passenger nodded, face impassive. "I'm fine." Leo took a breath, deciding to let it go. Right, on we go. They continued without incident until they reached the exit for his friend's place. Leo slowed. "This is my turn-off. Need me to drop you somewhere specific?" The passenger gave a small nod, unbuckling his seatbelt. "This is fine. Thanks for the lift." He opened the door and stepped out. Leo watched, half expecting him to vanish, but he simply turned and walked towards the intersecting road, disappearing around the corner. Relief warred with lingering confusion and fear. "Okay then," Leo muttered, pulling away from the exit. The rest of the short drive was uneventful, the tension slowly easing. But the dual encounters left him profoundly shaken, the boundary between the real and the spectral feeling porous and unstable. Back in the city, safe in his apartment, he couldn't shake it. The similarities were too stark for coincidence. Driven by a need for answers, he started researching local legends surrounding Highway 70. Article after article mentioned the phantom hitchhiker, weaving a tragic narrative from decades past. A young woman, Clara Vance, her car breaking down near the old Vance Mill one fateful night. She'd accepted a ride from a passing stranger. They never arrived. The car was found later, abandoned. Clara was never seen again. Since then, the sightings. Drivers picking up a silent, mournful woman who would vanish without explanation. The stories resonated chillingly with his own experiences. Clara's spirit, trapped, endlessly replaying her final, desperate moments. The silent passenger, the vanishing act, the pervasive sense of sorrow. It all clicked into place. A new feeling began to supplant the fear, a sense of empathy, a desire to help. He found the contact information for a local historian, Dr. Aris Thorne, noted for his work on regional folklore and haunted sites. Thorne agreed to meet, his interest piqued by Leo's first-hand account. Over coffee, they discussed the legend. If Clara's spirit is indeed tied to that location, Thorne mused, it's often due to unresolved trauma or unfinished business. Sometimes, simply acknowledging her story, addressing her needs directly, can help the spirit find peace. Armed with this fragile hope, Leo felt a new purpose crystallize. He would go to the old Vance Mill, the epicenter of the legend, Clara's last known location. He drove there as twilight bled into night. The site was now a neglected patch of land bordering a park, overgrown and shadowed by tall sentinel trees. The air was still, the silence broken only by the chirping of crickets and the sigh of wind through leaves. Parking, he walked towards the skeletal remains of the mill, flashlight beam cutting a nervous path. The structure loomed, weathered and decaying, emanating a palpable sense of age and sorrow. Taking a deep breath, he steeled himself. As he drew closer, the air grew distinctly colder, his breath pluming. A heavy presence seemed to settle around him. "Clara?" he called out softly, his voice absorbed by the stillness. "Clara Vance, I know what happened. I want to help you." Only the whisper of the wind answered. He circled the base of the mill, flashlight beam probing the shadows. Then, a faint sound, almost subliminal, carried on the breeze. "Help me." He froze, the voice instantly recognizable. "Clara, is that you?" The whisper strengthened, imbued with a desperate urgency. "I need to go home." Determination surged through him. "I understand. I'm here. Tell me how I can help you move on." A subtle shift in the atmosphere, a cold current swirling around him. His flashlight flickered erratically, shadows leaping and contorting against the decaying wood. He stepped towards the heart of the ruins. "What do you need, Clara? Tell me." A moment of profound silence, then the whisper returned, clearer now. "Find the letter. It tells the truth." He scanned the area. Where? Where is the letter?" "Under the old cypress tree," the voice guided. He turned, locating the large gnarled cypress standing sentinel a short distance away, its branches like dark, skeletal fingers against the deepening sky. Beneath it, the ground was a thick carpet of fallen needles and debris. Kneeling, he swept the flashlight beam across the base. There, half buried, was the corner of an envelope. He dug it out carefully, brushing away decades of dirt. The paper was yellowed, brittle with age. Inside, a handwritten letter, the ink faded but legible. "To whoever finds this," it began, "my name is Clara Vance. That night, I was stranded, desperate. I trusted a stranger on this highway. It was a terrible mistake. Please, know I meant no harm to anyone who stopped for me. I only wanted help. Help me find peace. Let me finally rest. Thank you." Tears blurred Leo's vision as he read, the simple words conveying a universe of fear and regret. "I'll help you, Clara," he whispered, clutching the fragile paper. He gently placed the letter back in its envelope and stood. "I hope this brings you peace." As he turned to leave, a soft, almost imperceptible breeze brushed past him, carrying not chill, but a profound sense of release, of gratitude. The oppressive weight lifted, replaced by a serene quietude. He knew somehow that it was done. He walked back to his car as the first hints of dawn painted the eastern horizon. The highway felt different now, just a road, silent in the pre-dawn calm. Driving away from the old Vance Mill, a sense of quiet accomplishment settled over him. Clara's restless spirit was free. The phantom of Highway 70 could finally rest. Later that evening, compelled by a lingering need for certainty, he drove that stretch of highway one more time. It was dark, quiet, but the menacing atmosphere was gone. He glanced instinctively in the rearview mirror. Nothing. No pale eyes, no shadowy figure. Just the empty road receding behind him. He allowed himself a small smile. A weight had lifted, not just from the highway, but from him too. The road was just a road again. Pulling into his complex, he cast one last look back towards the dark ribbon of highway. No longer haunted. He wouldn't forget Clara Vance or the chilling nights, but peace had finally settled over them both.